Welcome to White Pill Radio, the roughly every other episode version of Theology on Air, which is an outgrowth of Theology by the Pint, which is a monthly gathering in Houston around craft beer where we talk about theology and politics and ethics and morality and philosophy and all kinds of interesting things. To learn more about it, you will need to go to theologybythepint.org. Find out about all of our events, everything upcoming, our leadership team, who we are, what we do, and all of that good stuff. But there's so much to talk about, we can't possibly do it just in, a couple of hours every month. So we have this podcast, Theology on Air. Thank you for subscribing, by the way. And this is our version of the podcast, White Pill Radio, where we talk about, Christian worldview, news, politics, and everything like that from a Christian worldview. Let me say it correctly. This is post-apologetic, ultimately hopeful, applied theology that looks at news and current events from a Christian worldview, and I like to say that this is blessed talk, not happy talk. So there is a lot to talk about this week with the presidential election coming up and lots of things in the ether. But again, theologybythepint.org. Do want you to go there and check that out so you know what's coming up. We have some pretty interesting episodes coming up.
Yeah.
Events coming up.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about gender and identity. We have an open, just ask us anything, like Wild West, just get crazy.
I love that.
Stump the panel.
Who are you? Why do you get to talk?
Say that again?
Who are you and why do you get to talk?
Oh, I'm Sarah Stone.
That was my bad way of making
I was like, who am I? We're very good friends. Yeah. I'm so confused. He's having a stroke. No, I'm Sarah Stone. I'm the executive director for Theology by the Pint. Or as Evan likes to say, the Grand Poobah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and who are you?
I am Dr. Austin Freeman, and I am the chair of apologetics at Houston Christian University. The views expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views of Houston Christian University, unless you like them, in which case you should come and study with us.
And I just want to point out today,
every time.
Today we have the Austin Cam. The name of the camera changes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, today's the Austin Cam. So,
okay.
If I can never get a third camera, we could have Sarah Cam. But
I'm willing to cede my cam to Sarah if she wants it.
Anyway, okay. Well, let's jump in. Election as of the time of our recording is a few days from now. So predictions. Everyone likes predictions. I think it's okay biblically to make predictions, right?
Yeah.
If they don't come true, do we have to get killed? I don't know.
Not unless we say it was the word of God.
Oaths or something. Yeah.
All right. Well, who wants to go first?
I predict that either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris will be elected president.
Whoa.
Okay. All right.
One of those two. I think we can narrow it down.
I think you're 100% correct on that.
Yeah. Is the cam on him? Because the dry humor with no smile makes that funnier.
It is now. Say it again.
Well, forget it.
No, it's too late.
The moment has passed.
Okay.
It's fine. But you don't really...
No, I was very confident of what my prediction would be like a week ago, and now I'm not. I don't really know why.
Okay.
I'm just trying to monitor the Twitter pulse.
Yeah.
And I intentionally try to disrupt the Twitter algorithm from feeding me my own ideological slant. And so I feel like I have a fairly representative view of both sides of what people are talking about on there. I don't know. I mean, the polls are saying it's neck and neck.
Yeah.
But also shouldn't trust polling.
Yeah. And it's also weird because so many people have done early, but in the past that's gone one way or another. Yeah. And are we cannibalizing or all of that?
And so everybody, it seemed like, the early polling is all very much in favor of Donald Trump. And now they're saying the early polling is mostly female, and therefore Kamala Harris is going to win Pennsylvania. And it doesn't seem like there's a sustained narrative in any of the sources. It seems like everybody is saying diametrically opposed things, which ultimately to me means I have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? We can't make a determination. I would love to say that there's going to be one landslide victory, but I don't know that it will be. I think it will probably be pretty close, and it'll come down to a few thousand votes like it will last time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if that's the case, then
we're in trouble.
What, Evan?
That's where we're going to go with Evan's prediction. Go ahead. Is that what it is?
Well, I am going to predict that Kamala will not necessarily win, but will be the next president.
Wow.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot, and I thought maybe, is there some way what can I say? I mean, I think that in terms of raw numbers of people voting and the enthusiasm and the momentum, it's all there for Trump. So the polling, he's up +1, +2, +3 in all the swing states, and he's up +3 nationally by reputable good polls, And if you look at in the past, he's underpolled 5 or 6 points, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if that's really the case anymore because I don't think people are as ashamed to say they're voting for Trump.
Right. You're not the
So,
shy voters anymore.
Yeah, I don't know that you have those anymore. So I think that
You still have some, but yeah.
it could be that, there's like, I don't know. It could be that that's a legit number, but it's within the margin of error. And if it's that close, I can see chicanery going on. There's lots of evidence of chicanery already. Now
That is quite a word. That's an old-fashioned word. Tell our viewers.
Skullduggery was the word that Trump used.
yeah. Well,
Those are great words.
They're good. Let's bring them back. Make them great again. No,
Great again.
I mean,
Sorry.
my hope is that we're catching this. But I mean, these are not disputed facts. These are not conspiracy theories. Like in Michigan, there have been hundreds of thousands of vote cast with less than 100,000 voter IDs. They've traced back those addresses. They're fraudulent addresses, USPS post office boxes. Homeless shelters, stuff like that. Not admissible addresses. So there's been some things like that. The Colorado Secretary of State. I know it's not a swing state, but that she put out all these passwords online, and they just put Tina Peters in jail for that, for one password for 9 years, and now she does it, and there seem to be no repercussions for it. So, I think it could go a few ways. I think that if it's close, Kamala's going to win, because they're going to find the votes. And once they mix them in and once they count them, what are you going to do about it? Like, what is anyone going to do about those votes being counted? You can't uncount them. They've never uncounted votes, as far as I can tell.
So here's my question: is the ballot boxes that got burned in Oregon and elsewhere? What do you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about that story either.
Yeah. Well, clearly there's been disenfranchisement because in Colorado, again, there are 12 people. That's only 12 people, but 12 people who are clearly not citizens who cast a vote and it was counted. So the only possible recourse, because 12 people have been disenfranchised. And the point isn't so much that it's 12 people, It's not going to be called by 12 people, but is that but it's that if that got through the system, and those were just the ones that were caught.
Sure.
So the way we vote is insane. The way we vote is absolutely insane. You hand off your ballot to a postal worker, and you just trust that it's going to get to the right place. You trust that the people counting it, where you're not seeing it, are going to do the right thing. I work election day, so I only for the past couple of years. But I mean, the way that we do it in Texas is, there's been reports in Texas of like people putting in information, but the ballot printing a different name. So name switching. And if people didn't catch it, then that ballot would have been put into the scanner and would have been counted. I do not trust our system. I just do not trust our system. So I think basically one of two things is going to happen. I think either the people telling me the system is fine and it works, we're going to have a Trump blowout. He's going to win like 312 or more electoral votes, and he's going to win the popular vote. And I mean, I think that's very possible. If the systems work, that is what will happen. I don't.
It's a big if.
I don't have much doubt about that. But if you look at what they've done to get this man off the playing field, I mean, the once he announces the 6 trials or civil suits or criminal suits, which are mostly fraudulent and phony, not going through each one, but they've either fallen apart or they will fall apart. The assassination attempts, the taking him off social media back, January 6th. I mean, they tried to unperson him. They tried to dehumanize him in every way. Now, he, to his credit, like a superhero, is like stronger than ever. I mean, he just like takes it and he runs with it and he makes fun of it and he's in the garbage truck. You call us garbage, he's in the garbage truck.
Yeah.
You say you work at McDonald's, I'm a fry cook now.
Yeah.
I mean, he has done as much as you could ever ask a candidate to do. He's right. He's right on all the issues for where the American people are. Immigration, economy, they like his,
Sure.
So his populist message is way out front. But like I worry that if you look at what they've done to try to take him off the chessboard, why would they stop now?
Yeah.
Because there's no accountability in this country. Okay, we had this disastrous Afghanistan pullout. No one was. There's never any accountability in this country. There's just never any. Like 51 people lie about the Biden laptop, no accountability. The 2020 election was a disaster, even if it wasn't stolen. I mean, there was a lot of disasters.
Well, I mean, the New York Times published an article saying this is how we coordinated with the media and all of the wealthy people.
That was Time Magazine.
Well, and Zuckerberg also came out and said, wrote that letter saying
they pressured us to.
And now there's the whole thing with YouTube. I don't know if you've been following that. Different podcasters are.
I mean, they're basically projecting forward that the disinformation. I mean, I can't even believe we're still talking about disinformation after COVID. I mean, but like, yeah, they're basically making a preemptive strike now, saying that like, oh, the time's going to come when like all these. The Tim Pools and the Michael Knowles, all the conservative platforms, like they have to go because they've been lying. So I think all that's on the table. I mean, it's either going to be a Trump landslide, or we are truly going to turn a corner, and we are going to find that the government has total control over our elections, that they're basically going to dare us to actually fight back in some meaningful way,
like militarily.
I don't know what it would be. I mean, I think that there are other alternatives, like withholding taxes or something. I don't know. I mean,
do you think part of your prediction has to do, and we don't need to go here because it'll take longer, but just something to noodle on as you're falling asleep tonight, has something to do with your eschatology? I mean, if you generally speaking think the world is getting worse and worse, or you generally speaking think that the world is getting better and better as the gospel goes out, then that would affect, this kind of thinking. Like, is our government going to take a step for the better or a step for the worse?
Doesn't matter.
You don't think it matters?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily just about eschatology. It's about a historical perspective. So whether you believe that the world by the end of the return of Christ is going to be better than it is now, or whether you believe it's going to be worse, the fact of the matter is history goes up and down.
Yeah.
So there have been plenty of times.
But up and down with a steady up or with a steady down? Because both those things are possible.
Sure, but the fluctuation in the whole span of human civilization for this 1 4-year cycle, who knows?
Sure.
I mean, the New Testament is written when Nero is Caesar, right? There have been hundreds of years in Western Christianity where Christianity has been persecuted.
Yeah.
The Christianity is still in the rest of the world the most persecuted religion, living under totalitarian dictatorships. I mean, most Christians live in China. So there's, in terms of eschatology or not eschatology, it doesn't really matter in the sense that if you take a historical perspective, if you take a global perspective, the fact of which election is just or unjust, there have been both of those for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we get rid of slavery, we introduce abortion, and anyway. So I'm not as an amillennialist, I guess I'm not I don't think it's getting worse or getting better.
Maybe I'm saying that because my post-mill friends all think Trump's going to win.
Yeah.
And that's going to usher in the kingdom?
No, my post-mill friends are normal and nice and don't think that. No.
But they see that as,
and they think it's a long time. Like there's still a long time left. The gospel has to go out to all the nations, and
it could be that like he loses and things get dark. That we like we do
the dark
lose,
before the dawn.
And then but it takes something really like that to wake people up, and then we have a true kind of revolt against the globalist or something like that.
Interesting.
But I just don't trust the systems. I don't trust the people running them. I mean, most of the swing states are governed by Democrats. Like I just see no reason to believe. I mean, you look at 2022 in Arizona. I'm sorry, that election was just rotten to the core. I mean, the way that they didn't have the right size paper, it was scanned wrong. Like most of the things didn't fail. All the Republicans voted on game day, and Carrie Lake loses by a handful of votes. And who was running the election? Like her opponent. Her opponent was the Secretary of State in Arizona. Like you don't get to run your own election, but that's exactly what's happening in all these swing states. They're running their own elections. They can rig it for the party. And what are you going to do? You're going to audit it? You get laughed at. They had an audit in Arizona. They found a lot of irregularities in 2020, and they were laughed at. Nobody took it seriously. Nobody did anything about it.
And because they had an audit, everybody says, "Oh, it's ridiculous to doubt the results of these elections because we audited it."
A lot of what they call an
That's
audit,
a hard thing to say. Audit.
A lot of what they call an audit is not really an audit. A forensic audit, looks at all the data. But what they ended up doing a lot of times is count the same fraudulent votes over and over.
Oh, gosh.
So yes, you're going to get the same result. The point isn't to count fraudulent votes again. The point is to decide if the votes are in fact fraudulent or not. I will say, I mean, my good take on this is that we have come a long way. There are data crunchers out there who are able in almost an instant to look at massive amounts of data and correlate voting information with addresses that are legitimate with publicly available post office data. That's how they caught the people in Michigan this cycle. I mean, hundreds of thousands of votes have already been flagged as wrong. But it's like, how did that happen in the first place? I mean, even just today, I'll have to pull this up. Laura Trump Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, who runs the RNC, she said what happened in Michigan, that what I was just talking about, she called it a glitch. She basically confirmed with the Michigan Secretary of State it's a glitch. And other people have come out and said, no, this is not a glitch. This is, in fact, happening in 10 states. In fact, let me just read this real fast. Same voter ID is being used to cast multiple ballots, but using old addresses tied to the same person. This is from Peter Berniger on Twitter. America, we caught them. Happening in 10 states. We found so far. We have the data. Laura Trump, and this is from a conservative saying this.
Yeah.
Laura Trump is wrong, claiming that it's just a glitch. In Michigan alone, finding 284,000 plus repeats in the same voter registration system.
And I'm guessing those are votes for the Democrat candidate.
Well, I can't say for
Don't
sure,
know.
but it's like Austin said at our event in person the other night. Like, it's highly suspicious
Yeah.
that when we want to go look at the data, we have to sue for access.
Yeah.
Or the ballots are destroyed, or images are destroyed, or affidavits are ignored. I mean, why is it so difficult just to find out what happened in an election? If you
Yeah.
do it, you're called an election denier. I mean, how long did that go on? I mean,
Yeah,
that's still
it's
happening.
still happening, for sure.
So, and that becomes misinformation, and that becomes a pretext for silencing you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think we're out of the weeds on this. I think that 60 to 65% of the American people, if asked in a reasonable way, like, do you agree with these policies or these policies? Do you think that people who come into America illegally should be, asked to leave, or not be given incentives to stay? I think most people would say yes. Should we have a wall? Most people would say yes. Should you not be taxed on overtime or tips or Social Security? Most people say yes. Should you be taxed less? Most people say yes. We could go down the list. Like, all these
Yeah.
populist platforms that Trump has, I think most people are with him.
Well, those are Kamala's policies,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's
Oh,
that's
touche.
what I talked about in the
Yes.
is half of the planks of each of their platforms are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just
Well,
want to implement them differently.
Yeah. If you believe what she says, I mean, now she's talking about mass deportations. She said that the other night at her speech
I
on
know
the
she
Olympics.
did. And then
the
she-
same night people were called garbage. So
Yeah.
no one cared about what she had to say, but it's like,
Well, nobody heard it because Joe Biden upstaged her again. What is this, like the third time that there's been?
yes, it's about the third time.
pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
He speaks at the same time she speaks. She says we're on the same team. The
And
Ron
then she's
DeSantis
like, but we're
thing.
going to turn the page.
Yeah.
But also, there was nothing wrong with him. But also,
Okay, you
Yeah.
make your prediction.
I don't have a prediction. I'm boring. I obviously, okay. Wait, that's so
here,
close.
Push
That's
that
so
down.
good. Push it down? Okay.
The whole thing.
Push the whole thing down.
Eat the mic, Sarah.
I'm so loud. I feel like I don't have to eat the mic. It's close. I mean, I don't know. Anecdotally,
These
so
are
I
not
live-
predictions. I gave a prediction. Y'all have to give a prediction.
Okay. My prediction is that Trump will win by a tiny margin. That's my prediction. It's also just me being hopeful. Anyway.
What about the other things, the House and Senate, things like that?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Do you think Colin Allred's going to win the Senate?
No,
No?
I don't think so.
No idea. I have no idea. And I get all these
There's a lot of
texts.
Californians here now.
I get all these texts because because of my conservative leanings, I get texts from the conservatives, but because I'm connected to some family that they think I'm still married into. And I don't correct them. So it's like, my father-in-law's name, let's say it's Ben. Ben, we've got to do something about these crazy conservatives. I'm like, I know. Like,
For real,
just-
y'all. Yeah.
I don't tell them because I'm like, let them keep spinning their wheels and spending the money to talk to Ben, Anyway, but yeah, I'm nervous about cheating, and I'm nervous about the whole thing. I know that Jesus is king, and I know that no matter what, he rules the world and all of that stuff. But I also do think that, and I'm segueing now into my first article, that we do have I don't want to say a moral obligation, but I think we ought to vote. We actually just did 2 events. We did the event where you guys spoke on October 15th, and then on the 29th, we did one up in the Woodlands. For those that don't live in the Houston area, that's like a suburb. Both of them were about faith and politics, and we asked the question, are you morally obligated as a Christian to vote? And most of the answers kind of came around to something like, actually, the question was asked at this last one, is it a sin not to vote? And most of them agreed it's not a sin not to vote, but it is probably unwise, and it's not doing justice the way that we ought to for our neighbors, because this is how you can affect the kind of change you want for your neighbors. And to that end, There are several news articles that came out. The one we have here is from the Economic Times about this idea that a bunch of Christians aren't voting. The headline for this one is "Millions of Christians are not planning to vote in the U.S. elections. Whom will that impact more, Harris or Trump?" And it just says, based on research conducted by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, it's estimated that 104 million people who fall under the category of people of faith, of which 41 million are Christians and 32 million attend church regularly, will not cast ballots in this election. This one, I don't think has the Barna research, but I just pulled it up because this is where this came from. Barna posted the reasons listed for why these people aren't going to vote. 68% is a lack of interest in politics and elections, which is shocking to me. I'm sorry, it just won't stay. Talking about the mic. Anyway, I see it falling while I'm talking. Like, it's sad about our elections, I think is what it is. 57% dislike all major candidates. I feel that, right? We have
I would
flawed
have thought
people.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Well, these are of the people that aren't going to vote, and so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But 52% believe their vote will not make a difference, that's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And then 48% think the election will be manipulated, which we just talked about. But if you take that out and take out their vote won't make a difference because it won't if they don't vote. But this idea is that they're not interested and they don't like the people. And I would just like to say for the record, I think those are terrible reasons. First of all, I don't like the people either, particularly. I mean, I like one more than the other. I really despise Kamala. I can just say that now. I mean, I don't think that I've been holding my cards particularly close to the vest. But it's not like I think Trump is some wonderful human being. I don't believe that he's a Christian. I don't think he would call himself a Christian.
He's been posting some interesting,
I do think
very
he has
Catholic
softened
stuff. Like, he posted an All Saints Day thing on Twitter.
He
I
certainly
think he
likes
likes
Ave
Christians.
Maria.
Yeah. St. Michael and All Angels was
He posted
Festival
something to the
development.
Coptic Christians a few days ago, which was interesting to me.
Huh.
Anyway,
I don't know. I don't think, I mean, he has flaws, like a lot of people have flaws. That
all
said,
people.
yes, that's the point. I mean, I can't think of anybody that I'd put in office that doesn't. But the whole thing about not being interested in politics is fascinating to me because, and I was in this camp until 2016. It really was the Trump-Hillary thing that kind of excited me about politics because now we were talking about, I used to think politics was about like taxes and zoning and, stuff that I found boring. I never have made enough to actually pay that much in taxes, which is so lovely. But then you start getting culture war stuff happening, right? Really the conversations about abortion, about LGBTQ stuff, and then particularly in the last few years about transgender things, and all of that to me makes it interesting. But like, things that will affect your life are on the line. So to say you're not interested in it, I just don't understand. What are you not interested in? Are you not interested in, like, when you go grocery shopping, having things cost less? Are you, like, one of the things I've been really interested in recently is the whole Make America Healthy Again initiative, the RFK Jr. and all of the people in that kind of camp, doing things like making it illegal to put the poisons on our food that we do in America that the rest of the world is like, oh no, we would never put that toxic stuff on our food. That's not important to you. That seems important.
Or seed oils or, the vaccine schedule.
But then the abortion thing, I think it's just talked about so much that it's started to be desensitized, but it is, and I wish that somebody had said this even more vociferously the other night. It is murder. We are murdering people, human beings, real lives. That's not interesting or important is just crazy sauce to me. And then, I mean, the one that really gets me always is the stories of the parents that have lost their rights. They have a child that identifies as this other gender, and the parent that will go along with that gets to keep the child. And this is not just one story. This is many stories of people losing the rights and just watching their children slip away. And that is heartbreaking. So the fact that all of those things aren't, quote, interesting or important is baffling to me, especially as Christians who should be caring about our neighbors in this way. One of the points that was made the other night, and then I'll be quiet, that I thought was interesting from the conservative side was about immigration and how awful immigration is to the immigrants, to the illegal immigrants that are being, sex trafficked, put into slave labor, kidnapped, used as, ways to get drugs into it's just awful, awful, awful things, dying. so it's not just that we don't want them upsetting our lifestyle, right? Like, I think that's the perception from the left is like, we don't want them like in our way and inconveniencing us. It's not, it's not that they're like taking our jobs. It's also that they are dying. Hey guys, Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible, so we've crunched the numbers, and if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much. And now back to our show. They're being exploited.
It's a black market, and
Yes.
and so therefore it's not regulated, and therefore it's dangerous.
Yeah. Anyway, so Christians, if you're listening, I mean, I have a feeling if you're listening to this, you've already voted or plan to vote. But if you're on the fence, come talk to one of us. I just had a lady come to my house the other day and sit with me for an hour or so, just talked about issues, and she doesn't follow politics. There was a lot of things she just didn't know. And I would say something, she'd be like, "Is that for real?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's for real." So talk to one of us and then get out and vote.
Well, so here's the question. I have a person that I respect greatly who decided very deliberately when Biden dropped out to say, well, I'm going to vote for a third party candidate because I can't vote for either of these people. And so they did their research and they found a candidate that they believed upheld their Christian values, and they're going to vote third party. Is that a legitimate option for Christians? I mean, because if the important thing is to vote, then vote for a third party Christian.
Vote for
right?
Austin Freeman. Yeah.
Please don't. But is the important thing to vote, or is the important thing to vote for one of these two people?
I mean, I am of the mind, and I know people will be screaming into their speakers maybe. I'm of the mind that that's a wasted vote with something this close.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't that way, and I wish many things. But
I think in this instance, we need to go back to the settled wisdom of The Simpsons.
oh my gosh.
I mean, classic Treehouse of Horror episode. Two space aliens come down. They impersonate both the Republican and the Democratic candidates. And, you know, they're unmasked on the steps of the legislature. And the guy says, you have to vote for one of us. And then somebody in the audience, of course, well, I think I'll vote for a third party. And then they laugh and they say, go ahead, throw your vote away. And, of course, everybody ends up voting Republican or Democrat, even though they know they're both space aliens. And the next scene is them being whipped and building new monuments. And Homer Simpson, the last line is, well, don't blame me. I voted for Kodos. Right? Like I voted for the other alien.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is the two-party system is the major thing that's wrong with American politics. That's the thing that's radicalizing and polarizing our nation. Because in order to differentiate yourself, you have to continue to set yourself
separate.
You have to define yourself negatively over and against the other party. And the moderate wing is shrinking on both sides. We see that in our polling. So at some point, I think if a third party actually did win, if a third party won a presidential election, we would see a change in American politics.
Well, I think a third party is going to win, at least in terms of getting more votes. Because I think that's what Trump represents.
Right. I think this is why I kind of was upset that Trump ended up with the Republican nomination, because if anybody as a third party candidate was going to get a sizable amount, it would have been Donald Trump, because he's not a traditional Republican.
Yeah. But
he just fell into that two party binary again.
Yeah. But he's forcing the Nikki Haley Bushes of the world to like come to him.
Yeah.
Whereas they would gladly have their 15 or 20% of the vote, and the Democrats would, never break rank. So if there's a third party, I hope it's on the left. And they can, good luck to them. I mean, Bernie Sanders should have run as a third party. I mean, he is a third party. He is
awful.
He is actually an independent. But he fell in line. When they came to him and said, we're going to change the rules in that whole superdelegate thing, and sorry, Burrow, you're out. But I think that's the brilliance of what Trump has done, is that he is essentially, it's taken now these 11 years or so, but he has overhauled the Republican Party. He's given it a totally different platform. He's taken it a totally different direction. And, the joke is like, we basically traded, Dick and Liz Cheney for, RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take that trade all day. That's one of the best trades of all time. These are interesting people with fresh ideas and new ideas and innovative ideas, and the Cheneys are warmongers. And they're on the left now. Like, you can have them. Take them, please. And we'll get back maybe to a story about Liz Cheney later, but...
well, we can move on, but please go vote. And
no, and I want to say too, like even with my dire prediction, which I mean, I'm certainly hoping I'm wrong, and I think there's a good chance that I am wrong, but there's just a part of me that still doesn't trust the system. But I voted within an hour of the first day of voting, so you should definitely vote. If they are cheating, then our votes make it harder for them to cheat. Whoever might be cheating, so I do think that we should vote. I mean, Barna, though, I don't know what I think about Barna. Like, sometimes he's, like, so negative. So I'm like, it's like he's just always dour. And it's like sometimes the cynic is just, like, always going to be right at some point because, like, life fails.
And there's sin in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. But, but I do want to say, I do think a lot of Christians won't vote because of their eschatology. That, I think, could be true in the sense of, and Gary DeMar at American Vision will talk about this, like when he's trying to teach, about, theonomic principles and applying, God's law to every aspect of life. And people, he constantly came up against this thing where people are like, why bother? I mean, the world's going to end. And this was in the 80s. You had 88 Reasons to Believe the World was going to end in 1988. You had the Left Behind series. After that, you have all these like apocalyptic texts in Christian, popular culture. And people believe. I mean, they have believed from the 40s until today that the blood moons or the this or the that or the whatever are some sign that the world is ending. Why bother politics? That's hard work. It's hard work to go door knock. It's hard work to change people's minds. It's hard work. Apparently, it's hard work to show up and register to vote. And so I actually do think that this end of the world theology is a curse and a stain on Christian America or American Christianity. And I think we need to teach better theology, so that theology becomes a laughingstock. And then people say, all right, well, if Jesus isn't coming tomorrow, I better get, off my high horse and go make the world a better place.
Yeah.
What did Martin Luther say, Evan?
It's not true. It's I know you're going to, if the world was going to end tomorrow, I would plant a tree.
I thought it said I would finish planting this row of potatoes or something.
Yeah.
But the principle is,
I think it's anecdotal, but it's a great thought. And I agree with it. Yes. Plant the tree.
I planted trees this year. I know you did.
I planted 5 trees in last year. Wow. Yeah.
Have you planted any trees?
No, I haven't.
Just metaphorically, maybe. Okay.
Trees of knowledge.
I can give you a fig tree branch, and maybe it'll take off or something. Anyway, okay. Palette changer.
Palette changer.
Yeah, palette cleanser.
What did I say?
Palette changer.
Well, can you change your palette? I don't know. It does change as you get older.
Sure, but this is a palette cleanser.
Thank you.
Say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a Twitter post from a fellow named Morgoth, which you don't want to start out naming yourself after Satan.
What?
Yeah, Morgoth is Satan.
What? Dun dun dun.
Yeah, that's why you need.
We need the little sound effect thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I take it all back.
Amazon, he says, and some of you might have seen this. Amazon spent $1 billion on a fantasy franchise with Tolkien's name attached, and more people watched this. And it's a picture of a screenshot from Clarkson's farm, which is Jeremy Clarkson of Top Gear, in a muddy field with some pigs. It has now gone through 3 seasons, and I have watched all of it. And Evan, you've watched all of it. Sarah, have you watched it?
I haven't even heard of it until now,
Okay,
but I'm going to.
Fantastic.
Well, what is it? Give us
give us a summary.
So Jeremy Clarkson he's a very wealthy, like top tier celebrity. Like the English people tell me he's like Justin Bieber level famous. Like he's the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He's all over the place. And so he's got this large farm in the Cotswolds, which
1,000
is
acres.
Yeah, a very large farm. And he obviously
basically paradise on earth. I mean, the Cotswolds is. Yeah. I mean, it's where we vacationed in February. It was like a dream to go see.
An outstanding area of natural beauty is the official term in the British government. Yep. But he's got this farm, and of course, he bought it and just reaped the benefits of it while other people were managing it, and he would just come as his vacation retreat. But in 2020, his farm manager retired, and so he said, "Well, I'll run it." He has no experience doing any sort of farming whatsoever. And so the show is him for the first 3 years of learning how to be a farmer.
I love this.
And he hires one of the first things he does is he hires this young, like 21-year-old kid that's been farming since he was 14 and
has never left a 10-mile radius.
Yeah, has never been to London, right? He just only lives in this one little county. And it's delightful. You got great landscape. You've got
It's beautiful photography.
Yeah.
It's grade A photography.
the cinematography's great. The plot lines are really fun. And it
Are
really,
there any romances?
I mean, he's got a girlfriend.
Okay.
There's definitely some,
There's animal husbandry.
Okay.
there is on-screen mating. I will tell
Yes.
you that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And birthing.
Leave it
Yeah,
to
and
two men to
birthing.
be like, well, I'll show you romance.
Yeah. Two
You got-
cows.
You got your cows, you got your pigs, you got all sorts of stuff they're showing
Yeah.
on there. But it really is, in some people are saying like this is the saving British farming because it's bringing
Good.
such huge exposure to this and to the nightmare of red
Yes.
tape and bureaucracy that the British government imposes upon these people.
The villain of the show is the government.
Is government,
You
yes.
know? And he's a very much against Brexit, but I mean, I follow him on Twitter now, and not that long ago, he put out a tweet that basically said X whatever. That basically said, there was some kerfuffle about. I think it was after this immigrant or son of immigrants who killed these 3 kids at the dance group or something, like knifed them. It was a big,
Jeez.
you know. Anyway, and basically he's like, yeah, I mean, our immigration policy is ridiculous, and I understand why people are so bothered about it. Something to that effect. And this is a guy that, you know, said Brexit was the stupidest, says it on the show. Like,
Yeah.
Brexit was the stupidest thing ever. Why would we ever want to do this? And I think he's been red-pilled. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how much he can admit it.
Well,
but-
because he and his neighbors are trying to sell their pigs, for instance,
Right.
and they can't because the globalist economy is undercutting them on their prices,
Right.
and so these small scale farmers that are trying to farm in their community and provide food for their community, it doesn't matter. Just go to Tesco or somewhere else and get it from halfway across the world, and the British government makes it almost impossible for them to actually sustain their way of life, and it's
funny.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming. It's
I can't wait to watch it.
Oh,
I'm
it's
into
great.
this.
the total exasperation of his like daily life, which is like just the tractor brakes, the
You resonate with that.
the animals. I mean, just it is like it. But really, like if you want to accomplish something in life, it's really hard.
So, as somebody that grew up on a cattle ranch, doing things like this, it is so fun to watch this guy just flounder through trying to learn all
So
of this.
can you milk a cow?
Beef cattle, not dairy
Oh,
cattle.
okay.
So
Okay.
no, I can't. I mean, theoretically, I guess I could milk.
Well,
a cow.
everybody probably could,
Right.
but you haven't done it.
I've seen
Okay.
it on YouTube or whatever.
Okay.
No, I can build a fence. I can birth a cow. I can give vaccinations. I can
For real?
I can brand a cow. I
Listen,
can
if teaching does not work out, you have some fallback ideas. Or if we start a commune because the world falls apart, you know,
could be.
get a couple cows, have Austin come take care of them.
yeah.
I like it.
But one of the things about this quote, one of the things about this tweet that caught my attention is not just that Clarkson's Farm is a great show. You should really watch it on Amazon. But it's the contrast
Yeah.
Yes.
to the utter failure of this Lord of the Power or whatever
Rings
it
of
is.
Power,
Rings of Power, which I haven't watched a second
I
of.
thought season 2 actually was better than the first season.
Okay.
I
So
mean,
give a review of like what is that show?
Okay.
I thought the 28 hours of film we already have from Peter Jackson sort of told the whole story. What have we been missing this whole time?
well, Evan.
Yeah.
The Rings of Power is a series set in the second age of Middle Earth, of which The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are set in the third age of Middle
You
Earth.
dummy.
But the problem is they only have the rights to the Lord of the Rings book. So the only information that they have about the second age is from the appendices of the Lord of the Rings, and they cannot legally use any of the material from the Silmarillion or any of these
I
other
mean,
texts.
how is that possible if they've read it and they just know it?
Well, they skirt the
Oh my
line, and
gosh.
sometimes they do it very cleverly. So can I nerd out for about
Yeah.
10 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, so in season 1, Galadriel's brother Finrod, she finds him, like she's viewing his dead body, and he's got all these claw marks on him. And they don't say why that is. It could be anything. If you've read the Silmarillion, you know that Finrod has been killed by Sauron in the form of a werewolf. And so the claw marks are on his body, and it's not said explicitly why or how he
Sure.
dies.
But they leave the
but they
viewer,
leave it to
yeah.
where the viewer kind of knows and can put the pieces together themselves. I think they've done this several times, including with one of the main characters in the show, and his identity. So the issue is they're starting from this premise of they're already kind of hamstrung themselves in terms of the stories they have to tell. They have to only work with one arm, as it were. And so some of the things that they've done is not really their fault, but the point of it is everybody kind of sees this as a product. right? This is part of the entertainment machine,
Mm-hmm.
TM, and it is seen as a sort of cynical cash grab by Jeff Bezos and other people. Whereas Clarkson's Farm is genuine, and it's like real people doing things in the real world, and it's life affirming, and it's all this. It does not have any. So he makes a joke in season 1 that they've met their DEI contingent because it's just like a field full of these 60-plus-year-old white British men with their caps on, and he said we've got every kind of white man in the Cotswold. Yeah, but that doesn't matter, right? Because that's not what the show is about.
Right.
The show is about him and his farm, and they don't feel the need to package it to be the most appetizing to whatever demographic. And so people are they're going to be attracted towards the genuineness, the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
It exists for its own sake, not for the sake of selling itself.
Yeah.
Now, see, that sounds like a post mill right there. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, I think there's good news in that, and this is a big problem with Hollywood. They just throw money at it. Just throw money at the problem. They're not developing interesting characters, interesting stories in many cases. It's like, but if we spend $1 billion on it and we make a show and it's got great CGI and all the costumes and blah, 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 and a name recognition because we bought how much did they have to spend to get the rights even to the appendices? But like that doesn't make for a good story. And this is my hobby horse for years has been that I've lost interest in these, the comic book, what have you, because like the stakes are always too high. Like if the only stake is ever the end of the world, like it's boring after a while.
Well, and it necessitates its own demise in that the Avengers have to stop the end of the world, and then they have to stop the end of the universe.
Yeah.
And then the only thing left is the threat to the multiple universes. Yeah. And at that point, nobody cares because whatever happens to this universe, you just go to the one over.
You can always time travel.
Yeah. Whoever dies, you just time travel, grab them from somewhere else. Yeah. And so nobody cares anymore. Yeah. The stakes become so high that they get negated.
Yeah. I remember I used to watch Siskel and Ebert back in the day. Yeah, you're too young for that, but
I know who they are.
Yeah, but it's a little movie review show, and they reviewed the Anthony Hopkins film, The World's Fastest Indian, which is about a motorcycle, not a Native American, and it was just. He might have even been a British guy, but he had this dream of going to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah and racing, having the fastest land speed motorcycle record at the time, and I don't know, the 60s or 70s, and it was his story. It was a true story. And, I think Siskel was saying, who cares? I mean, no, why does anybody care about a guy going fast on a motorcycle? And Ebert was like, but it matters to him. And so there's like a whole paradigm, thing. Like how do you view what is storytelling? Like what is art? What is the purpose of it? And I agreed with Ebert. It's like it's an interesting story because I cared about him. And that going fast meant something to him. And I want to see him succeed.
Yeah. Well, there's also something in the middle of those two things that you're invested in the character, you care about what they care about. But in between that and saving the multiverse, there is the accessibility of dreaming along with them and being inspired. So you watch something about a farm and you think, well, I can actually play a part in something like that. I'm not going to maybe own 10, whatever many acres it is, but I could go buy organically or regeneratively farmed stuff.
Sure.
Or but you can't save the multiverse because it might not even be a real thing. And then, you're not that guy. So I think there is something about can we latch on and be a part of it? And that's what
can
kind
you
of excites
participate
people.
in the story? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is also the best mode of evangelism and apologetics is can you allow the person to participate in the story of the gospel?
Is that your segue to our next article? Because that was pretty lovely.
It can be, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's your story.
Yeah. So I have actually kind of turned a corner. Turn the page. I turned the page on this. Let's all do it together. I'm kidding. I'm making fun of Tim Walz' wife in case the viewers and listeners don't know what I'm doing. I just want to be really clear on that.
Who has been taken off the campaign trail, by the way.
Okay. What's her name, Jill?
As has Jim Biden, as of this afternoon, Mark Cuban, by the way.
Oh, really?
He was pulled off the Kamala campaign.
Ooh,
when he basically insulted all women, basically, yesterday or 2 days ago.
I missed that.
He said Trump never has any strong, independent women around him. Yes, he does. He has many of them.
All he does.
Whatever.
Have you ever met a woman that likes Trump?
You ever seen his lawyers? They're all attractive 30-something-year-old, hot shots.
That's funny.
Anyway.
Maybe he's surrounding himself with them for different reasons.
Well, I hope not, but yeah.
I hope not too. But okay, so this is an article about Pastor Andy Stanley. He's been on our radar before several years ago when he said some stuff about the Old Testament that not all of us loved. But his recent, and I did go and listen to at least snippets of I guess it was a sermon. he says that the only 2 miracles are required to be a Christian. So the question that he asks is something like, do you have to believe in all the miracles of the Bible to be a Christian? Well, I think all of us would say no. No, you don't have to believe in all the miracles of the Bible to say yes to Jesus and follow him. Now, once you're following Jesus, will you come to believe all those miracles? I would hope so. And I listened. So I was mad about this at first because I thought what he was doing, and I still think this is something that is done all the time, was trying to bring people as far away from the spiritual realm and as far into the natural realm as if those 2 things can be separated, and they can't, but we think of them that way, as possible to not sound silly. So he's basically saying, all you have to believe is that the universe exists, it's something from nothing, that it was created, and Jesus' resurrection. And his whole point at the beginning is most people do believe that the universe exists. There was nothing before, there's something now. And so in some ways, we all do believe in that first miracle, which is kind of cool. So really all you have to do is latch on to this one other thing. And then he does say, and that will open up the door to believing many other things. So I'm not as upset as I was when I saw the clickbait of the article that I sent in. But I mean, especially because if you do assent to the resurrection, then you automatically think a person can come back from the dead. So then you've already got 3 miracles because he brought, well, more than 3. Because Jesus brought other people back from the dead. He's not the only dude that came back from the dead.
He is the only one never to die again.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Yes. The resurrection is special and different for sure. But my bigger problem, and so I don't have beef with Andy Stanley about this. I think when
that's
I
no
listened,
fun now.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I
I
have
have
beef with him
beef.
for other reasons.
Okay.
I heard it. I think I really did hear the heart behind what he was saying when he preached this. But like as a bigger idea, I think, golly, am I becoming a presuppositional apologist? I think that Christians try so hard to make the gospel accessible that we actually end up taking out the sort of deep magic, as C.S. Lewis would say. We take out the mystery, the beauty, the majesty of this strange and kind of unknown spiritual realm by saying, no, listen, we can distill it to these easy things, these easy handholds that regular, normal, sane, scientifically minded people can do. I think normal, scientifically minded people can be Christians, but the whole deal is you do have to swallow something that is seemingly impossible. The resurrection is seemingly impossible. And
Yeah, that's the whole point.
that is the whole point. And so, yes, if you, so then I guess I'm saying I'm all in on the miracles, and it makes my faith so rich and beautiful to think, like, do I think that the sun stood still during the battle that Joshua fought? Now, I don't know scientifically how that worked. Did the earth stop rotating? Was it, their perception, whatever. But either way, what they saw and what they experienced is that the sun stood still. Do I think Jonah was swallowed by a great fish? I sure do. Let the record show. I may be the only one in this room. But no? You're with me?
Of course I do.
Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, if
Gosh, you should be part of
Jonah,
the leadership team.
if Jonah is a historical narrative, then that's what happened.
Do you
now,
think it
the-
could be more?
I propose all who do not believe that get kicked off the leadership team right away.
Evan and I have had sort of silly beef about this for a few years. He's wrong. It's fine. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about Andy Stanley. I think on this one, I'm with him. I wish it hadn't taken off the way it did in sort of the media, because now it seems like he's saying, don't worry, you don't have to believe the power of God to do these other miracles.
Well, that's definitely what Not the Bee is charging
Sure.
him with, right?
Yeah.
That he is watering down Christianity. But I think they are imputing him with teaching theology when actually he's teaching apologetics,
Yeah.
right? Like
And
this
he really is making a plea to the skeptic.
Yeah. So this is their last sentence. He's taken all of the teeth out of the Bible by saying you only have to believe in 2 miracles. But I mean, this is the case that Paul makes in Corinthians and elsewhere, right? If Jesus Christ is not raised, our faith is in vain.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the central claim of
Yeah.
Christianity. When you accept that, then the door is open to everything else.
Yeah.
But if you try theoretically to pitch out every other aspect of Christianity, what is the essential truth? The truth is that God
Christ
raised Jesus
crucified.
from the dead.
Yeah.
And all of the rest of Christianity gets built from that.
Yep.
Why do we believe that the Bible is inspired? Because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead, and therefore God has put his seal of approval on all of the teachings that Christ gave, such as the authority
Yes.
of Scripture, right? So it all comes from that. And the issue that he's trying to say is, what is the most strategic way in which you can cut out all of the extraneous noise about differing interpretations?
Sure.
What is the thing that really needs to be admitted? Let's talk about this one clear thing. Can you believe this? And I mean, I tend to agree with him. I agree with him both in the sense that you have to have these two. That is the bare minimum. And also, if you have those two, everything else follows.
Yes. It's the everything else follows that I think wasn't immediately
Right.
apparent in the article. And so I thought he was saying, I actually read it almost as if he was saying that stuff may not have happened.
Yeah.
He may not have fed the 5,000 or pick another thing, but it's not what he was saying. So I reserve my rage for someone else.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I think it's like I think what he's doing here is kind of a sleight of hand, though, because it's like he's saying, well, first of all, I think I would add the virgin birth as a kind of third miracle. I would say that, but I think what he's basically doing is he's saying, look, if you can just lift the 5,000-pound vehicle, you can save your child trapped underneath it. I think that's what he's basically saying. All you have to do is believe in creation from nothing. That's the whole shooting match. That's the whole thing, because creation from nothing is the very barrier that if we're talking about atheist, I mean, there are different kinds of apologetics and different kinds of approaches you might take. If I'm talking to someone who's an unbeliever, like an atheist, a materialist, a naturalist, a physicalist, they have philosophical commitments and, I would argue, presuppositions that need to be challenged at that level. The whole argument is about creation from nothing, because the whole point is that I would try to get them to see that they believe absurd things.
Yeah.
That they live in my world. They have to borrow from my world to make sense of theirs.
Sure.
And so I would point out contradiction after contradiction after contradiction, which I did this week. I talked to a college student for an hour this week and did this over and over and over and over, and how he was begging the question, how he's special pleading, and all that. Okay.
And in the end, was he convinced?
No.
Not yet.
No, but I don't think he would have been convinced by evidences either. I think, anyway, it was a tactic that I chose to try to point out that he cannot construct the world that he wants on his worldview. Because on the one hand, he says murder is wrong, and on the other hand, he says humans are animals, and then he keeps going back and forth. You know, and abortion kind of started the whole debate. So, you know, a baby's not a human until it's born, but anyway, I've used some of these. I won't go into all that, but my point is that, like, if you can believe in something from nothing, then by definition, you're not a physicalist, a naturalist.
But you might be a Muslim.
Right. Well, it would be a different tact, where I think now you're debating, texts. So I don't know that presuppositionalism per se, although I think there's presuppositional ways to debate with a Muslim or to debate with a Mormon or something like that. But now you're debating texts, and I think those are sort of different kind of ways of arguing, and we do want to do a show about this methodology, because this article brought up an interesting conversation in our group thread about apologetic methodology. But to me, for him to basically say, like, you only have to believe in, like, creation, it's to me, he's not wrong. But again, to an unbeliever, that's the very thing that they reject. So it's like saying you only have to do a 180 from everything you think is true, And so it's like, well, the question is, how do you do that? And I don't think that's a question he can. Now, I will say this has been a critique that, say, James White has had through the years of, say, the William Lane Craig Evidential School, the Frank Turek School, where what they seem to want to do is constantly retreat in the apologetics world to the safe territory, to the thing that they can absolutely 100% defend with 99.9% certainty, because I think certainty is at the heart of this as well, versus probabilities. And so they think, and this is the Gary Habermas approach,
minimal facts.
Yeah, like, we can prove, like, with almost 100% certainty that Jesus rose from the dead. And so, I mean, this is what's his name, who just died, by the way, the Lutheran.
Oh, John Michael Montgomery Warwick. He has a bunch of names. What is it?
John Warwick Montgomery.
There we go. I got you there.
Yes. I'm thinking of William Wallace, our friend.
J. Warner Wallace?
Yes.
He
all
only
those
used to
names.
alive.
all
William
those-
Wallace died a while ago, lad.
all those names were floating in my head. Anyway, but he does the same thing. Like he begins with the cross and resurrection as like a certain fact of history that we can bank on. Well, there's a whole Greg Bahnsen wrote an extremely long article responding in the 70s to that article saying that, well, no, you can't just depend on the cross and resurrection. Like you can't just depend on that as a historical certainty because apart from certain presuppositions that history can be known or that things, truth can be relied on or sensory, perception is true, or you're assuming that the text is accurate. I mean, like an unbeliever is not going to assume our text is accurate.
That's part of their method, though. Mike Licona does the same thing. Like the strategy is, I'm going to cede as much ground as you want me to cede, right? I will give you all of the stuff that you're asking for.
Yeah.
And even at the end of the day, on the assumptions of the most critical scholars there are, the resurrection still happened, right? That's the best explanation. So Licona and Habermas, neither of them assume that the Bible is inerrant. They say, there could be all sorts of textual corruptions, but the seed of this text, you can't get around this particular thing. So I don't know if Habermas or Licona or any of these people would say this is the only method that's appropriate. But it does target a specific certain sort of people who share these basic presuppositions about the interpretation of history and whatnot to say, look, critical scholars, right? Other New Testament scholars, I think, is probably their field of like all of y'all that are studying the Bible for some reason, even though you don't believe that it's the Word of God in any meaningful sense. Why are you doing this? Like, was Jesus raised from the dead or not? People that are operating under a basic worldview of Western civilization, some sort of theists, whatnot. Okay, let's grant the most radical critical claims and see if Christianity is still standing. Let's take the entire Enlightenment project at face value and respond to it, and guess what? Christianity's still true. I don't know that that's the same method that they would even want to apply to somebody that doesn't share those presuppositions, but that's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Does that make a difference?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, the apologetic argument comes down to the nature of the human being prior to regeneration, and whether what capacity a person has to even assess information or to make a confession of Christ. And so I do think that the reason that presuppositionalism lives in the Reformed world is an inherent sort of distrust of man's ability prior to regeneration, is an inherent belief in total depravity, which doesn't mean that they're all evil goblins. It just means that every aspect of their being, including the noetic effects of sin and all that, are real. And so it's a spiritual conversion ultimately that draws one to confess Christ. It's not that they lack information. So and I would tend to agree with it. Now that said, presuppositionalists are not against evidences. They would simply say that all evidence belongs to God. That the evidences can only point one way. And so when we present evidences, we do it with a certain kind and certain amount of certainty, rather than an aspect of
exceeding ground or
what's the word I'm looking for? Not
timidity?
Probabilities.
Oh, okay.
Because the White Horse Inn guys would always tell the story of like a Jewish rabbi who studied the resurrection, and he definitely came to the conclusion that Jesus definitely rose from the dead, but he did not agree that Jesus was the Messiah. So even when you retreat to the smallest possible, most defensible, castle you can form, like the most sure thing we've got is that Jesus was not in the tomb after 3 days. There's always going to be wiggle room. There's always going to be people who can say, yeah, but that doesn't mean he was the Messiah. So our insistent is like on the whole shooting match.
Well, there are some people that even believe that he was the Messiah and was resurrected and aren't Christians.
Yeah.
They're called demons.
I was just going to say, I think you're talking about demons.
Yeah. But I would say I tend to be critical of this approach because I do feel like you're trying to get an unbeliever or maybe someone kind of interested in Christianity. You're trying to I think it can be a dangerous path to sort of empower them to determine what is reasonable enough to come to faith.
Yeah.
Like the call that the church makes is repent and believe. Mm-hmm. So instead of appealing to their wisdom and appealing to their reason and appealing to their ability to make these judgments, and that might not be a charitable take on what he's doing, but instead of doing that, I think in at the end of the day, we need to be calling the world to trust in Christ and to admit that they're sinners, and apart from Christ, they cannot be saved, etc. It's a different message.
Well, we don't even need to have the apologetic argument anymore. We just had it.
I have a lot more to say.
Okay. But can we move on for
Yes,
time?
let's move on.
Yeah.
This was an article that just came out today. Tucker Carlson's been on this tour. He did a whole thing in Arizona last night. That would be Thursday night, and Trump said the following. He was talking about Liz Cheney, and he does a weave. I don't know if y'all know this, but
Everyone knows this. If
Where's
you
the
listen to
weave?
Joe Rogan,
he kind of anyway. But what he started talking about Liz Cheney, and this is what he said. And this is the part of the quote that one of his critics, Aaron Rupar, put out on a tweet. Quote, "Let's put her," that is Liz Cheney, "with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. Let's see how she feels about it, when the guns are trained on her face." That's not the most articulate way or kind way maybe of saying a certain thing. What they were talking about was the fact that the old Republican Party had become a warmonger party, and how Trump is not for forever wars. He wants to bring our troops home, or some of them, and that Liz Cheney in a Harris administration would probably become, the war secretary, or whatever we call it now, defense secretary. And he's saying that's a bad idea. What he's been accused of saying is that he is targeting her for execution by a firing squad.
Oh my gosh.
Because there are 9 barrels shooting at her. His point was, it's unacceptable. This is Creedence Clearwater's Fortunate Son, right? It's unacceptable for D.C. bureaucrats and politicians to send everyone else's children off to war and to now draft them into war, which seems highly likely, or at least possible in the future if we keep going on this trajectory. Meanwhile, their children are always exempt, or they themselves are always exempt. So his point was, oh, you believe in war? Oh, you think we should be fighting?
Get in there.
Yeah, then go. Because he even says in the quote, "Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her."
Right, with a rifle is not getting executed.
Yeah.
You don't need to give your victim a weapon.
So it's kind of indicative of where we're at with the media, that even when he says something that seems pretty clearly to mean one thing, they'll take a snippet of it and turn it into something else. And now for the whole weekend, we're going to debate whether Trump thinks Liz Cheney should be executed by a firing squad. That's not what he said. He said, "I care enough about American citizens that I'm not going to continually send them off into foreign wars," which used to be the left position. And that's what I'm saying. I think he got into the party and he reformed it from within. Just stroke of genius.
This same thing has been happening left and right over the last few weeks. It's happened with the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala. It happened with the whole,
$10 billion
human garbage
lawsuit
thing with Biden. Like, oh, there was an apostrophe. No, there wasn't. That's the stupidest. Anyway.
I give him points for creativity, though. I was like, how are you going to get out of this?
He didn't think of
Put
that.
an apostrophe, which you can't see in speech. I mean, it doesn't make sense
except no one puts
no one
someone's
believes it.
name as a possessive and then pauses after. I'm never like,
yeah.
You know who's the worst? Austin's.
Dog.
You know what I mean? There's not a pause
Don't you
after
dare.
that.
No.
My
I've
dog is
never
a
met your
good
dog.
boy.
I know.
Totally depraved, but no, I'm kidding. It's a dog. So this doesn't surprise me at all. The sort of splicing and pulling. It's people do this to the Bible too, right? Like cherry pick and make it sound like a certain thing.
But this is what I've noticed, and this is what has given me hope in this thing, is this feels so different than last time because of Twitter.
Yeah.
Right? It used to be that Twitter was ground zero of the problem, and now how many of these hoaxes, how many of this
have been
misinformation has been exposed almost immediately as a result of this platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
Thank you, Elon.
Yeah. No, it's legit. People said when he bought Twitter that it was
$44 billion was not the price of Twitter. It was the price of restoring freedom of speech.
Yes. And that it was like I would give up a couple of Senate seats for this. And now I'm like, I'd give up 10 Senate seats for this because I totally underestimated like the power, of what Twitter is. Even leftists that hate Twitter, like Keith Olbermann, he uses it all the time. He's like, I'm leaving, I'm out of here, I can't take you people anymore. We're going to Facebook threads.
This person said something weird. Arrest them.
Yeah,
that's every Keith Olbermann tweet.
Yeah, but no, it's been a big deal. It's a game changer. It's like the #1 news site. It's half of what I use for the show is are tweets that I take screenshots of because for some reason I can't print them, but I can take screenshots of them.
But notice this. 21.8 million views of this tweet.
Yeah.
by Aaron Rupar. Who is Aaron Rupar? I've never even heard of this.
I don't
guy.
know. He's a critic of Trump. I don't know if he's a media guy or what. So, but he's been sort of blasted. Very quickly, last. This is another tweet that I screenshotted. Very quickly.
Speaking of
I
Elon
think
Musk,
Screenshot. Anyway, go ahead. Oh,
point.
the speaking of Elon Musk was just this. Sorry.
It's basically a chart, and you can't see it. Maybe on the Austin cam, he'll hold it up when you can see it. We're gonna do it right now. Let's try to explain it.
Ooh,
Boom. Okay, yeah.
ah.
So you see these. Basically, it looks like the hills of Appalachia or something, but actually, it's a graph, and it basically charts.
this is from the view from JD Vance's house.
Yeah. It is, and actually, metaphorically,
Ridge.
because he was in Silicon
Oh
Valley.
yeah, that's true.
But this is Silicon Valley. It's basically saying-
Hold on. Named his company after one of the rings from The Lord of the Rings.
I did not know
Full
that. Which is
circle.
what?
I forget what's his company's name.
Okay.
It's one of the 3 elven rings.
Oh. I didn't know the elves had it. I thought there was only the one ring with the writing.
Well, there's
One
one ring
rules
that
them
rules them
all.
all.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, Silicon Valley is polarizing a distinct left and right wing camp. So the bottom line is it used to be a right wing place in, say, 2000. Okay. And then in 2020, it was a very left wing place. And now it's sort of a little more right wing and a little more left wing. But what you have is this huge dip in the middle. And I only bring it up to say that I think this is indicative of what's going on in the culture at large. Like there really isn't a place in the middle anymore, that you kind of have to choose a side, that the moderate is getting edged out. There are fewer undecided or moderate voters anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it would be good if we were kind of all somewhere in the middle and we were all debating relatively secure things. But like you were saying earlier, the culture wars kind of forced these sorts of issues. I mean, you're either pro-gay or you're anti-gay. You're pro-trans or anti-trans. You're pro-abortion or anti-abortion. You're, like you kind of have to have stances on these sorts of things, and there's not like good arguments to make for, as there might be for like a VAT tax or a, capital gains tax or something like that. There's not like
Right. Some things are
trade-offs.
binary and some things have a sliding scale. You're
Yeah,
like, is
yeah.
the tax, is it going to be 20% or 22% or 24%?
right.
But that's different between can a boy become a girl?
Yeah.
And should we do that to them? Yeah.
So I would say it's a good thing because Silicon Valley is kind of controls our speech in many respects. So I would say that this kind of lurch back in the last 4 years to the right is a good thing. There's sort of balance in the force. And at the end of the day, I think that's good for America to have, our institutions more balanced ideologically. So I think it's an interesting data point and hopefully a good one. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, well,
right.
everybody ready for the week? It's crazy. Yeah.
It's Narya, which is the ring that Gandalf wears.
Oh, okay.
And then also apparently with Peter Thiel, how do you pronounce that name?
Yeah.
So allegedly also he's got another company called Mithril Capital. So that's
Oh,
2.
That is two.
That's 2.
Interesting.
Mithril's like the armor stuff.
It is a metal that you can use to make armor.
Oh my gosh.
Where can people find you?
People can find me. I have a Twitter. I mostly use it to post the books that I've read. But I also teach classes at Houston Christian University, some of which are open to surveyors.
And he is often at our events. You'll definitely be at the one in December 10th,
yeah.
answering questions. If you want to ask him a hard question, come on December 10th. Or I guess you could watch it on the live stream and text it in.
Good.
Yeah. Go to theologybythepint.org, find out about our upcoming events and how you can support us.
And you're Sarah.
Yes.
I guess
Sarah.
everyone knows that. But anyway, I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. Thanks for watching. And until next time, we encourage you to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.